Yo, thanks for checking out the Affecting Our Altruism podcast. This show brings you the voices of people who are doing incredible work to affect positive change in the world. We explore our unique relationships with the principles and the community of effective altruism. Some identify with it, some don't really. That's cool. All of us, though, care deeply about making the world a better place. In today's episode, Ahmad Banwi joins the show. Ahmad is a Canada-based financial advisor. I know him as a specialist in effective giving. Ahmad began his career in financial services in 2021 when he decided to pursue his lifelong passion for personal finance. He left a career in retail management, completed his securities license, and started as an independent advisor for Canada Life. Following an exponential growth in his client base, he opened up Village Financial in 2024 with the goal of reaching more people in his own way. When not working, Ahmad enjoys hosting lunch dinner parties, volunteering in the city of Hamilton, Toronto, meeting new people, traveling the world, and playing the piano. Ahmad lives in Hamilton, Ontario, with his husband, Alan, and their two cats, Frank and Gus. In our talk today, Ahmad drops quick tips to leave a better legacy, at least for those listeners who don't like vehemently hate people. We dig into Ahmad's story, how the smart theater major got into financial services. We even got real about how we show up to our community privilege. We somehow connected the daily practice of complimenting people with the Brandamista developed it, movement, economic theory, sort of, kind of. We try. At least I try. We talk about human dignity versus food banks, and of course, how to set yourself up to join the ranks of effective givers. It was really cool to speak with a professional who was able to add perspective on human behavior through his observations of how human apes relate to charitable donation and what we can do better. We also dig a little bit into some spicy takes on EA as a movement. So Ahmad is a podcast host's dream. He's got the gift of gab, and if you enjoy the talk and would like to talk with someone about money, particularly the Canadian context, consider reaching out through his website, villagefinancial.com. Ahmad doesn't represent one charity specifically, like my previous guests, but don't get it twisted, this episode isn't an ad for his company, okay? I invited him to talk as a member of the effective giving community, which is a global thing, and in Canada, it's also blowing out too right now. We're grateful that Ahmad has taken the time out of his day to join us today. Have a listen. Hi, Aman. Welcome to the Affecting Our Altruism podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
Yeah, we're just living another day above ground, doing great. Really appreciate you coming on today, Aman. It's been a while since we've chatted, and it's an exciting summer. There's a lot going on, it sounds like, for you, and a lot of things I want to hear about, what you're doing with your work, and also living a good life as an altruist. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Ahmed. I'm a new addition to Hamilton, Ontario, transplanted from Toronto. I own Village Financial, which is a financial services firm in Ontario, and we do investments, insurance, tax planning, budget planning, consultations, financial therapy, anything that you have feelings about your finances, that's what we take care of. So that keeps me busy, and it's the joy of my life. And then on the side of that, community and charitable giving are a big part of who I am as well. So that's kind of what's up lately.
Cool. The second thing is how I first got to meet you, and this first thing you said was how I got to know you a little bit better. You hosted a online event. I think it was in person and online hybrid a couple of years ago about charitable giving.
Yes.
And I learned a lot. And then I got in touch with you later, and you helped me and my family figure out how to live in Canada. We moved to Canada, so we had a lot of questions. So appreciate you helping us with that.
Oh, it's my joy. And I think I operate under this guise of, we are in the financial services, we are professionals first, we're still second. So we should be giving people help because they deserve help and they deserve the time of our profession. And I guess that's where the altruist level falls into my work is that I find myself doing things like that, like just, newcomers to Canada. And I was really excited and wanted to offer some tidbits if I could.
Mhm.
So there's my small way of being altruistic in my profession as well.
Yeah, let's keep paying it forward. I hope that people listening to this can learn a little bit about you and about your experience, and maybe even something about finances, maybe from a Canadian perspective. Our audience is not just Canadian, so maybe something also more general too. To start off, you started your own company. You started Village Financial. That's a change. You were somewhere else before.
Yeah, so I was an independent agent with Canada Life, which is one of the major insurance companies in Canada. But being an independent agent, I was able to do both wealth and insurance. So I was able to do the full side of financial planning. Long story short, my business grew a lot really quickly, and it grew to the point that it made sense to start a financial services firm. So that's where I'm at right now. Village Financial is pretty fresh. The website is still under development at this moment. It's still a little bit lorem ipsum and trying to get rid of all that stuff. But um, we're kind of at this moment where we have such a huge community of people that we serve on all economic levels. I have multimillionaires. I have people who are negative $100,000. It's been the joy of my life to serve these people. And I think from that joy is where the growth has happened, because my clients can really see how much I care about them. And what ends up happening is we go through the process and then they'll say, oh my gosh, my mom was retiring soon. She really needs some advice. Or my friends just bought a house. They're kind of feeling really nervous about it. And then from there, it grew and grew. So that's kind of how Village Financial came to be. And I'm hoping in the next couple of years, it's going to get larger, because the larger it is, it just means the more people we help, right? It's not about me taking home a fat paycheck at the end of the day. I do this work for free regularly. So I definitely need to get paid. I need to, buy vegetables and pay my bills. But I love my job so much that I gladly do it for free a lot.
Wow. Not everyone can say that.
It's a privilege. Most people, they hate their jobs, right? Or they're indifferent to them. So I feel it's a great privilege to say that I'm like Monday morning, 7 a.m. I'm ready to like get on the computer and chat with people.
TGIM, some say, but not a lot. How did you come up with the name Village?
Yeah. So a lot of people in financial services, when they decide to incorporate a firm or they get a little bit larger and they want to brand under a name, they almost always use their own name. So it'll be like, Smith and Associates Financial Services, blah, 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 right? So there's a lot of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you can totally name your company after your own name or yourself and your associate's name, like put together. But the struggle that I was experiencing is that nobody knows who I am. The only way you're going to find me is if you already know my name and you go Google my name. So that doesn't help me with people who have never met me before. Specifically, I was kind of brainstorming, doing the whole scribbling down word clouds and all that good stuff. And then I'm an LGBT person. And for anybody who is LGBTQ, when you hear the word village, you know what that means. If you go to a new city and you ask, where's the village? We know what that means, right? It's the place in the city where all the queer and trans folks tend to hang out. Whether it's a bar, whether you're looking for a date, whether you're looking for community services, that's what that word means pretty globally as well. Like even in other countries, people say the village. So I wanted to adopt something like that into the work that we do in financial services, specifically that I do work with a lot of LGBT folks. And then it was kind of born from that, Village Financial. And even outside of the LGBT community, when you hear the word village, it has kind of a community connotation to it. It's not so much about, I didn't want this organization to feel elitist. I didn't want it to feel that only a certain type of person could contact us. I wanted it to be for everybody. And even you'll see on our website when eventually it goes live, in our services menu, we have a specific thing that says low income. So I still want to work with people who the regular financial services folks totally throw them aside, because we get paid based on how much money we manage. So if you have $1,000 to your name, nobody of my level is going to talk to you, right? So that's where there's a gap. But those folks really, really deserve advice. And sometimes it means that I can't necessarily open an account with them, but I can give them my time. So I can chat with them, I can give them instructions, and we can follow up over time. And that's my gift. But those folks still deserve to speak to us.
Well, like if I think of a village, I think of a wide range of people and the different economic tiers and situations. So it sounds like there's more than just a cool word to it. And yeah, it shows your culture and what you're trying to create with your company. I like it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, good luck with the website. Whenever it's up, we'll put it in the show notes and people can navigate to it and find out more. And we'd love to keep posted on how it grows and hope that it grows a lot. I definitely want to talk more about like your business vision and how you accomplish that for Village Financial. But first, I'd like to maybe talk a bit more about effective giving. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, charity is a big part of who I am. And even before I knew what EA was or the Giving Pledge and all that wonderful stuff, before I was ever introduced into that, I already had this vision and idea that my life, a portion of my life would be dedicated to people who are less fortunate than I am. And in my own, like I'm pretty transparent. So in my own financial planning, at the time when I leave this green earth, basically all of my money is going to charity. At least 80 to 90% of it is going to charity. So that's kind of been my personal vision, is that wealth for me is something that's going to be used in my lifetime. And in my lifetime, I will give portions of it away. The reason of my existence is to affect as many people as possible while I'm here. So that's kind of already in my DNA.
Nice.
And how it kind of comes into my work, it's delicate because it's not my position professionally to ever tell a client what to do with their money. So I can't just say to somebody, hey, you have X amount. Have you considered giving portions of it away to charity, right? Like that would be very, very inappropriate, right? But I do find ways to slip it in gently.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are some things you could do with your money, because a lot of times when I build financial plans for people, they, in 20, 30 years from now, when I show them their projections, just based on average market returns, they're going to be deca millionaires, right? So then I'm like, well, and then they say, well, I don't need all this money, right? I'm pretty simple. I drive a Honda Civic, travel once per year. Like, I'm just not going to start going to Louis Vuitton every day. So then the thing is, well, what do you want to do with it? And then most people say, give it to their kids. That's the first thing they say. Pass it down to their kids. I'm like, totally fair. But I'll kind of say, hey, there's other things you can do as well. If you have a charity or an organization that you really care about, or maybe you don't even have an organization, but you have a specific world issue that you are quite concerned about, if you would like to give a portion of your estate to that charity, it's actually beneficial for your estate in total. Because when you die, there's 3 people who can get paid: the government, a charity, or your kids. You can pick 2. So most people are going to say kids and a charity. They'd rather give the money to a charity than the government, especially the very, very wealthy, right? So based on how we do estate planning and where your money is going to end up after you're gone, a lot of the tax bill can be wiped or reduced by pushing those funds towards a charitable organization instead of the federal government. So at the end of the day, it's like, anyways, the money is gone. The money is going, it's gone. Who do you want it to go to? Would you rather give it to a charity, or do you want to give it to Doug Ford, right?
Now that you put a face to it, it becomes a lot clearer.
Yeah. So it just gives people like a lot to think about. And none of my clients they're not in their 80s or 90s. Like, we're not thinking about, oh, like the end is nigh. But people who are in their 60s and 70s who are retired and like they're thinking about the 30-year plan, I've been able to have those conversations. And most people have been very receptive to it. Like, why not? Right? Unless you vehemently hate society, like, you're not going to be opposed to giving to charity.
I don't know how many people you found to want to work with who vehemently hate humans or people or sentient beings. Have there been any?
Yeah.
I don't want to assume.
No. because I can smell it from a mile away. And that's the beauty of my business, is that I am not a bank where a customer walks in the door and I have to serve you. And I only work with the people who I want to work with. So everybody that works with me, I have a great relationship with them. I care for them deeply. You know, we have similar values. And again, going back to village, community, all of that good stuff. No, I haven't experienced that. And even if I did experience that, that would be a quick bye-bye.
Well, I hope you don't have to shut the door in too many mean people's
This
faces.
hasn't happened yet. No worries.
Wondering if we can go a little bit way back, go into the Wayback Machine for you. I'm interested in how you found yourself in this position where you have this knowledge, you have this training, and now you have all this experience and capacity to help others and guide others to their financial goals. Is this something you've known about a long time? Like when you were a kid, were you giving people advice or mathing really well? You good at math? Like, how did you get here?
Oh, opened a can of worms.
Tell me all the grisly details.
I've had I've had a very long 30 years on this career. When I was a kid, I was actually studying to become a concert pianist.
Huh.
So when I was going to university, I was basically at the time where I was going to audition to become a symphony playing pianist in the symphony. And at the time, I kind of was traumatized because if you know anybody who was a serious musician in childhood, it's very stressful. And I was a little bit traumatized by studying music. So I let that go in grade 12. And then I ended up going to school for theater. So I actually have a theater degree, which people laugh at because like you work in finance and you started school in theater. But I always say like everything that you've done in your life, it's all like adding to the soup. Like I am a certain kind of soup and there's all these little ingredients that went in. So my education was like the potato in the soup, you know, it's just part of it. I also worked in retail for a very long time. I was in retail management for about 10 years, several different companies, store sizes up to $10 million revenue. And then COVID happened, as it happens to everybody. During that time, I was one of those few people. I think like most people had a very rough time in COVID, and rightly so. It was an atrocious thing that happened. But when the world closed, within a week, I basically sat on my couch, had a meditation moment, and I said, this is the greatest gift I'm ever being given, because now I can work on what I really have always wanted to do, which is to work in finance. And the reason I say that is because all through my life, from age 14 years old, I've been reading personal finance books. I've listened to every personal finance book you can imagine. 70% of it is trash, right? But then you kind of get into that, when you know enough, you can filter the trash from the good stuff. And I just like collecting, absorbing information. 18, 19 years old, I was aggressively saving my money. Didn't know anything about investing, but I was aggressively saving. I managed to pay off all my student debt while I was still in school.
Wow.
So by the time I graduated on graduation day, I was clean of student debt. I worked my butt off to do that, but I had, I guess I would say in Italian, la voglia to get that done. So, and then I was also, when I would connect with my friends and talk about their money, you know, when you're 20 years old, like money is not something that's top of mind. You're just trying to get through school and do what you got to do. But I was talking to my friends about getting out of debt, helping them create their budget sheets. And I just always loved doing that. I got so many of my friends out of debt. It was amazing when I was like 22 years old. And I've always wanted to work in finance. And then I kept saying, there's just no way I can do it because I didn't go to school for business. So while COVID happened, I forced myself to sit down and say, well, what does it actually take to, like, what licenses are required by the government to do this work? Did the research, figured out, okay, at the baseline you have to have is the Canadian Securities course. So I just did it during COVID. And I passed both exams on the first attempt. Wonderful. Self-studied. It wasn't too difficult. Did that. And then once the CSC was done, I quit my job and said I was going to become a financial advisor. So I did that, completed, got my certificate, and then I quit my job. I was working in retail at the time and said, I'm going to become a financial advisor. And I had nowhere to go. So I quit my job. We moved house. Me and my now husband moved to Toronto downtown. And then I found my way to Canada Life. And from there, that's how it grew.
Wow, there you go. So it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of you had this predilection to saving, to just having like good sense with money at a younger age, and being able to communicate that to your friends. Sometimes that's a hard topic to broach.
Yeah, I'm very convincing though.
You got the woo factor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's also like maybe you could know everything, but you're like you can't convince everybody you're right.
Well, actually, here's a little anecdote. I believe that most CEOs in the world, like 70 to 80% of them, are trash. They really suck at what they do. They cannot run their company. Like even if like they're really, really good seemingly at what they do, the reason that they get where they are is because everybody likes them. Everybody in their organization vets for them. They are people, right? Think of Elon Musk, right? Elon
Mm.
Musk is who he is because everybody loves this guy. And at least they did for a very long time. Now the conversation is different. But for a long time, people kissed the ground that this man walked on.
Mm.
And because of that, Elon Musk walks in your bank asking for $50 billion. The check is already written. So when if there's anything that I can impart on whoever's listening to this, if you can work on becoming a very effective person, a person that when you enter the room, everybody wants to be beside you, that is going to get you so far in life. Like, so far in life. Think about like if you've ever worked in a corporation, like the people who are way above you, you look at them and you're thinking, how in God's name did that person get that job? Right? We've all been there. You see these people and you're like, how is this person at the job that they're at? It's because somebody or a group of people really, really like them. So if there's anything you can do in your life that's going to help you get far, it's to get people to like you, like get everybody to like you. And perception is everything. People are going to judge you the way they judge a cover of a book within 10 seconds. So just
Mm.
accept it to be true and manage your emotions and manage the way you present yourself. Because if you can present yourself really well, even if you have a different opinion, no problem. But you have to get people to open the door to you and trust you a little bit, and then you can push them, especially when you're talking about hot topics, political things, or even within EA, there's so many opinions within EA, right? And it can get really frustrating sometimes if you're struggling to get people to understand your side.
Yeah. It's in, and it sounds like it makes sense that your first sort of quote unquote clients may have been your friends because like you people are willing to make changes that may be against their rational interest or rational knowledge as long as they have somebody to go in with on it. Having the peripheral vision of the humans around you and how they perceive you. That's something I've always paid attention to. I don't know if I am good at paying attention to it at this moment either. Hopefully I'm doing all right.
It's a work in progress, right? It's not like you wake up one day and you're like, I'm really good at perceiving others or how I want myself to be perceived. Look, we all have weird, awkward moments, and we wanted something to go a certain way, and you learn and you go easy on yourself and forgive
Yeah.
yourself.
I love the comfortable part of this conversation, and I'm also interested in like the uncomfortable part where, okay, now we are enjoying privilege, we're enjoying comfort, and this is not something that a lot of people get in the world. Let's talk about that. And let's talk about like I'm happy with being myself and rewarding myself and I think I need that to fuel me to move forward. And yet not everyone gets that and not everyone can experience that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we, as the privileged people, have a duty to uplift others who cannot have a voice, right? So those people who are struggling to fill the space, fill the room, in whatever way you
Mm.
want to take that analogy,
Mm-hmm.
I believe that we have the duty to help. And it could be financial help. It could be donating to an effective charity. It could be taking somebody out for a coffee, right? We're in this together. We're a global community. We are a city community. We're a country community. Like, however you want to identify what community means for you, community means that we have to be there for our neighbors, especially the ones who need a little help standing up.
Mm-hmm. It's not always a resource to be confident and also to have that 360 degrees awareness of what people think about you. It may be something that we get trained into through, I'm going to call it a trauma response. If we experience like rejection, then we learn from that and we become more socially aware, situationally aware. That might be how we then become able to follow your advice earlier about making people like you, and then you're going to get rich.
Think of yourself, and I'll even think of myself and your listeners as well. Think of, there must have been a time where a friend, a colleague, a family member stood up for you. We've all had it in a small way, in a big way. And you could probably think in your head that there's one specific time where somebody said, hey, Elliot is great because A, B, C. And because of that person standing up for you, things really changed in your life. And I've been fortunate to have somebody do that for me several times, like many, many times. Amazing how many people have said, hey, actually, Amin is really good at what he does. You need to stop saying these things. And I can remember those moments. I'm so grateful for those people. And it's like, they don't even realize that they did it for me. But because they took that action, I was able to progress on my journey and get to where I am today. Because it's happened to me, that's how we need to pay it forward. We need to stand up for those folks in our professional circles, in our family and friend circle. It doesn't mean you have to, that it's a negative situation, but it could be that saying, hey, friend, I know you're really struggling at work right now, but I want to have a truthful conversation with you. I think you could do better by doing A, B, C. And I'm telling you the truth because I respect you and I respect that you should hear the truth.
Solid. That's so good. That is the flip side to it. Compliments are rarer than they should be, in my personal opinion. I'm a former, future failed teacher. In my training of being a teacher, I noticed that it's like a desert of compliments. Children and young people really do respond when they're noticed authentically for something that they did, they applied themselves to. And skilled complimenting and praise is like, it's so powerful to give people direction and a track to move forward on, to create a reward chain that isn't about punishment. It's about positive uplift.
Yeah. And I think like a compliment, it can be kind of easy, right? You can say, oh, you're super cool, right? It's the difference between saying you're super cool versus, hey, when you did that, it made me think about this. And I thought that was really cool. So you give the cause and effect, like you did this thing, which I really appreciate. And the effect of that was ABC. And then people can understand why you are giving that compliment, right? So it's about the depth. And I think we sometimes are lacking the depth of relationships because we're kind of scared to get deep with people, especially in professional circles. I get very deep with people. That's because I'm open, right? I got nothing to hide. So because I've got nothing to hide, and I'll tell people my whole life, all the gross parts and the fun parts and all that, good stuff and bad stuff. So because I'm willing to give that, people are often willing to have a deeper experience with me too. So then when you give somebody a compliment, it feels more authentic. It feels authentic without you having to say, I'm being authentic right now. You're just having your lived experience.
Yeah. And there's where trust gets built piece by piece.
Totally.
I'm interested in your thoughts, maybe discussing charity, EA, and Randomista, the Randomista movement a little bit. For the audience, I want to introduce the term Randomista. Randomista is, I hope I'm using it correctly, to describe highly specified, targeted interventions in global health that are proven to be good through really careful research, usually randomized control trials. When giving a specific compliment to somebody, you're saying, at this time in this place, you're doing a thing that I approve of. And I think Randomista charity is like that. When we have really solid research showing that such a thing works, bed nets, for example, work in southern Kenya at a certain time of day for a certain population, and we have pictures of those working, that's effective charity. And that's a good charity according to, does that make sense? Does this connection seem logical to you?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We're all talking about the same thing now. What would the opposite of that be? What would the sort of flip side of that be?
That makes me think of people who, the average person who donates to charity and whatever that means, right? How society uses that term, donates to charity. And for some people, it's I took a soup can, dusty old soup can from my cupboard and took it to the food drive. and they feel really good. This actually brings up a good point that I've done recently. So especially around the holidays, like food drives seem to be like the hot charity, especially in local communities.
Mhm.
And I'll go to people and I'll say, hey, so-and-so is running a food drive. Were you thinking about donating to that? They're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go buy a bunch of groceries and bring it to them. I'm like, actually, the best thing you can ever give to a food organization is money. Give them money. They don't need your old kidney beans from your pantry. They got enough of those. And they'll say, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, because they've got way better buying power than you're ever going to have.
Mm-hmm.
They've got people they can call and they know what they need. You don't know what they need, right? A lot, like that actually was pretty effective because sure, like food banks are not necessarily the most effective charity in the world, right? There's a lot of arguments that there's other cause areas that are more important, all that conversation, we'll leave it to the side. But if you're going to do it anyways, at least do it better. Stop giving them bags of beans.
Yeah. Yes. That's so frustrating. Because I get it. I get wanting to physically give somebody something. But you also clean out your home in the meantime. That sounds like a selfish need. That's a fuzzy, you might call.
I think people, they give to, a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of times they give to charity because it makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
I gave a $50 check to ABC organization, and then they go announce it to all their friends. Oh, I donated, woe is me. I cannot buy my purse this month. I've seen the like martyrdom of people when they give to charity, and I really, really appreciate when people give and they don't say anything. They just give because it's the right thing to do. And we can pick apart till kingdom come which charity you want to give to. But at first, let's just start giving something, and then we can pick that apart at a later date.
Yeah, everyone's coming from a different place. And I think that's something that I think is kind of exciting about effective altruism in my point of view, because you could go all the way down the rabbit hole of expected value theory and be like, okay, shrimps, or sorry, that might be really inside joke, but shrimps. And, the potential value of protecting invertebrates from lots of torture in the future is very possible, but also kind of outside the scope of most people's thinking. However, doing a little bit better than you had been doing is like not far from common sense. It is common sense. It's just common sense isn't that common.
Yes. And I think if again, we're talking about charitable giving, right? Most people haven't been challenged on this.
Mm-hmm.
But most people nobody's come up and said, oh, you're giving to the United Way? Why? So there's nobody there just giving a little bit of pushback gently. And I've had a couple of conversations in my life where I said, oh, you're donating to ABC? Well, why? And then they'll say, oh, they do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, how much of every dollar goes to their initiative? I don't know. Let's pull up the website. They're always publishing this data because they legally have to. And then when we look it up on the website, it's these atrocious figures. So then I say, well, are you at least going to consider maybe doing something different? And then most people say, yeah, they had no idea that this is how they manage their finances.
There's a gentleman who is expected to also speak at EAGxToronto in August. His name is Michael Lenczner, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. One of the questions that his work is in pursuit of answering is, how are you actually aligning your missions with what you do instead of pretending it's the case? And I think the nonprofit industry is really trained to pretend to look good, that we are supposed to post some kind of numbers that show that we're doing something with the money that we get. And so these kind of weird and perverse incentives that have emerged. I just learned a little bit about what Michael is doing, and I'm really excited to learn more, maybe in EAGX. Yeah, but just even getting just somebody to scroll to the bottom of that charity's the United Way website and say, what are you doing actually with resources you've got?
Yeah.
That's a big lift for, I think, most people.
Yeah. And the way I've talked to people about them, I say, if you give me $100, you say, go grocery shopping for me. And I'll say, okay, I'm going to go grocery shopping for you, but I'm not going to tell you what I'm buying. That seems really ridiculous, right? You're like, no, go, here's $100 to go grocery shopping. Here's my list. I need some banana. I need some avocado. I need some of this. So people can conceptualize it. You just got to give them an analogy. It's a little bit weird that you give somebody $100 and then you say, go with God. Like you gotta question these people. And sometimes questioning is not negative. Like people take that so negative connotation. Questioning doesn't mean we're upset. Questioning just means I just want to know. That's it. And if that $100, 40, 50% of it is administration, that's probably not a charity that I'm interested in.
I think one of the defenses of some effective charities is that their administration costs could be pretty high, and yet they still accomplish far more. It's like through high levels of measurement and evaluation and reporting, and operations could be expensive. So long as ultimately what comes at the other end of the machine, what it spits out at the end, the output, as long as that's up to snuff, then you can call it effective, right?
Yeah. And totally fair, right? But if an average person might see for every $100 we spend 50 on administration, they're not going to be able to process that anymore. Like, what do you mean $50 of my money goes to your staff or your operations? So that can be totally valid. Maybe there is a high operation cost and a high administrator cost, but then we have to do better at explaining how those resources that, like exactly what you said, the output is a certain amount, even though so much of it is going to a specific area of the nonprofit.
Totally. Yeah, I think we're in agreement there. I just want to be clear, my view of Charity Navigator era charity is that that's level 1. That's 0.01 step version of effective altruism. To get to ask what the charities are spending on that is 0.1 version. And then GiveWell is the 1.0, where we're okay, Charity Navigator published a little hit piece article on GiveWell when it first came out. It's so funny how bad it is. It's childish.
Well, people get so offended. People are so easily offended. Why are you bashing another organization that's just trying to think about this in a new way? We're all friends here. It's like inviting people to the dinner table and then smacking them over the head at your house.
I'd like to agree with you, Emin, but there's such a competitive thing going on amongst nonprofits because people aren't obsessed with effectiveness. And there are perverse incentives that create charities against each other that are supposed to be cooperating. Could we I touched upon EAGxToronto. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
So I heard that you were planning to give a little presentation at Effective Altruism Global Toronto this August 2024. Is this rumor true?
It is very true, and I hope I will see many people there.
What do you have in mind for your talk or workshop?
Well, similar to a workshop I led a little while ago, the topic is financial planning for effective giving. I'm not going to spend any time discussing the pros and cons of a charity and or cause area. I'm going to assume when you arrive there that you already got something you're hot for or something that you will be hot for shortly after the conference, and that you want to financially plan to start giving to this organization or organizations. So the question is, well, how do you actually do that? How do you take the giving pledge, right? Whether you want to give 1%, 5%, 10%, doesn't matter. We need to actually do it, right? As much as I would like to give all of my money, I got to pay my mortgage, I buy groceries, we still have to live our lives to a certain extent, but we also want to give. So if you're planning to take a 10% pledge and every month you want to give 10% of your earnings or whatever metric you want to use, how do we actually do that? And I'm going to talk about being able to achieve your giving goal and push it a little further. Because I think with taking the pledge, we focus on, I earn so much and I want to give a percentage, therefore this is what goes. That's wonderful. But there are ways to exponentially grow your lifetime giving amount. Some ideas I'm going to throw out there are using your life insurance. If you already have life insurance, you can just change the beneficiary name to the charity in most cases. And all it requires from you is to call up your insurance advisor, print a beneficiary change form, and send it back to them over email. It's a one pager. Well, folks who are coming internationally, it's going to be Canadian specific because we live in a world of finance where everything is American specific. So it'd be nice to talk about the Canadian Income Tax Act and how that affects us in Toronto. So I'll talk a little bit about that and other ways you can exponentially or potentially exponentially grow your lifetime impact. So an example being, if you want to give $100 per month, maybe you give $80 directly to a charity, and then you open a side investment account in whatever investments that are good for you, put and let that grow exponentially. And then when you die, that can create a perpetuity that then pays your charity or charities forever after you're gone.
Forever?
Yeah, you can technically create a perpetuity. As long as we're all here, the sun doesn't blow up and the world of finance continues. Again, these are things that we have done these things in financial planning for a very long time. Nothing I'm going to share with anybody is anything unique to me or my personal idea. Like these things just exist. Just people don't know about them, right? Doing these things for the uber wealthy since kingdom come. So you can start this kind of method with $10. You don't need to have $10 million, right?
Yeah.
$10 grown at 8% of interest compounding over 40, 50 years. You can do the math. It's going to really add up over time. So I'm just going to present some options.
It sounds like you can open a couple cans of worms in the room there with things like perpetuities and compound interest and the way everyone's situation being so different. Do you expect to, after, like, say, even before that conversation, to kind of start conversations with people who might be interested in working with you you're their advisor?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I'd love to talk to people. And at the end of the day, I appreciate the coffee conversation just for it being a coffee conversation. So if you're interested in learning about these topics, ask an advisor. I'm an advisor. Ask me anything. I should do that on Reddit. That'd be fun.
Yo, Reddit's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm between Hamilton and Toronto, but virtual is always wonderful. So pick my brain. Absolutely.
Very cool. That's exciting. I'm excited for you. I mean, that sounds like I can hear you talk about this and just like the energy and the excitement flow through because you just have this knowledge that can, if you shared it to the right person at the right time, could like really turn some frowns upside down.
And again, like I was saying earlier, we've all had those times where one person has really made an impact on our life. Like maybe this will be it for somebody, right? Maybe my 1 hour spiel is going to really, really encourage somebody to make a decision that then results in thousands of people being helped through an effective charity, right?
Choice.
Just for me standing in a room and chit-chatting, because I just love to talk. So I'm just going to go there and talk. And then next thing you know, domino effect, many people are helped.
Right. So, I mean, part of what I want to accomplish in this podcast is getting a variety of perspectives in how effective altruism may represent a limited worldview or a certain set of worldviews. And I think I'd love your input on this thought about, well, like we have these organizations, these think tanks and the GiveWells and the ACE, Animal Charity Evaluators, who provide advice based upon their research on how well money and donations could be used to accomplish sentience, happiness, goodness, well-being, etc. in the world. Do you have any critiques or concerns with the way that these recommendations are given in general?
Yeah, I think it can be challenging to hear some viewpoints that suggest some animal welfare initiatives are quite, for lack of a better word, extreme. And the analogy that I would give is that if there's a fire burning in a house and there's a child stuck and there's a tank of 1,000 fish in it, we're going to save the kid, right? And anybody who saves the fish basically is not going to show up in society after that. You know what I mean? Like nobody is going to forgive that person. So I think that as a society, as a humanity, I think we organically believe that a human person has a certain amount of value more than a tank filled with X amount of animals or fish. And it doesn't have to be fish. I'm just using it as an example. So I think if we accept that, then we should, to an extent, focus on human issues a little bit more than animal issues. That doesn't mean that we stop exploring. Like, I don't want animals suffering. I don't want the factory farming. I don't want the overfishing and all of that horrible things that are going on. But if I can choose one thing today, it's going to be saving a kid.
A human kid, not a goat, right?
No, not a goat. Not today, little goat friend. Especially, like, for example, like something as dumb as malaria. It's just dumb. Like, it's just stupid that it's still happening.
No.
I mean, it's like, it's so easily fixable if we have the resources and we have cooperation. And yet we have millions and millions of kids, like, horrifically suffering from this disease, right?
And you know what?
Yeah.
Think about malaria is like, one reason why malaria gets so much attention in EA is because we found really, really cost-effective solutions to it. And yet we got tuberculosis, which is equally preventable and cheap, but it's like they haven't really gotten as good at preventing it and stopping it as malaria. So it's like we have these really, really well-run malaria charities, but then TB's over here, like knocking down even more people at young ages, children. Yeah. And I know there's Habiba Banu is working on a project at Spiro. So there's a lot of like nonsensical death happening, and I feel you on that.
Yeah, and I agree with you on TB. TB has been this secret killer for many hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And we have treatments for it. And because it's still festering and it hasn't been totally eradicated, now like you have like antibiotic resistant tuberculosis. It's become such a problem. And there's been basically no research or new medications in 50 or 60 years on TB. It's been a long time since big progress has been made on tuberculosis. Go on YouTube, Kurzgesagt made a video on tuberculosis. You should check it out.
We'll drop that link here in the notes. Tuberculosis, what else we got? What are the scourges are? There's so many scourges that just don't have to be scourges today. Hepatitis C, another EAGX plug. And a Toronto plug, there's a really exciting thing happening with One Day Sooner. They are they're looking to get a human challenge trial started. Hepatitis C is another scourge that really doesn't need to be happening, and it's not been solved because it's not profitable for pharmaceutical companies to solve hepatitis C. Hopefully the work being done at One Day Sooner could prevent a lot of suffering and death amongst people in the global south, as well as people experiencing addiction with intravenous drugs in other parts of the world. These are market failures. So Aman, I really appreciate that, that aspect of your business.
Well, thank you. I think it's good, but it's also sad. Like I wish the people in charge of the world were a little bit better at what they do.
Well, that's why they got us.
To fill the gaps.
Thank you, Aman, for coming on today. Only a quarter of Canadian taxpayers donate to registered charities. Far fewer donate to charities that measurably affect the world. And only a tiny fraction of those charities are committed to maximizing their effectiveness. I know times are hard with inflation and stuff, but just think there are 712 million humans living in extreme poverty today. That number hasn't recovered since the global shocks of the pandemic. And that's the kind of desperation that few North Americans have ever known, and honestly ever will. Personally, I started my effective giving with Give Directly, which has been getting a lot of attention lately. Mr. Beast thing, literally giving money as efficiently as possible to those affected most by global inequality, like through a trustworthy channel. It has such a simplicity to it that you have to really work hard to do better. More recently, I've shifted my donations to charities considered the world's most effective. That's my journey so far. Now, if you want to make effective giving a part of your life, but want to make it tax efficient and sustainable, reach out to Aman. Yeah, so what do you think? As I say, this podcast is a truth-seeking one. So if you're listening to this and you disagree with something you heard here, there's an issue or I have a factual error, yeah, please hit me up, correct me. I'd love to hear you out, keep the conversation going. Drop a note in any of our social media accounts at Effecting our outros, spelled with the E, Effecting. The next 2 episodes coming out will be focused on effective giving as well. So if this topic excites you, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a chance to dive deep into it with me. Now, that's enough for me. Thank you so much for listening. Now go change the world.